Hello, everybody. Today's daf is Metzia daf Tes Vav 15, and we are beginning from daf Yudalit Amid Beis by the Toshma towards the Yudalit Amid Beis. I'll make it bigger. We are discussing here it's between explaining the Shita of Shmuel. Shmuel, Shmuel said um, Shmuel said that Shmuel said that if someone buys a field that was stolen. Guy sold a field. He sold you the Brooklyn Bridge, right? So he sold you a field that was stolen, and now the Nigzal took it back. So the purchaser goes back to the Goslin, and he can get his money back, of course, because it turns out it was a stolen field. But the improvements that he made on the property, very interestingly enough, you don't get back. Now, why? So Shmuel said like this: if you paid for the property and it turned out to be stolen, you didn't buy anything. And basically, what you did was give a free loan to the Goslin. Okay, so now that you want your money back, if the Goslin will return you your money back plus the improvements that you made on the property, so it looks like he's giving you back ribbis. You lent him X $1,000 and he's returning you $1,200. So therefore, Shmuel said, Mois yeshlo, you get your money back. Shvach ein lo, you don't get the improvements that you made on the property. So the Gemara is trying to, that's a very novel chiddush of Shmuel, and the Gemara is trying to find if it's true from different brises. Toshma, come in here. Lachilas Paris. If you're coming to collect back because somebody took away your fruits, then you can so it doesn't say the Bryce is telling you have a right to collect it back. If someone foreclosed on your fruits and it was unfair, then you have a right to collect that fruits back from the person you got the property from. So Ketzad, what's the case? Says the Brisa, Hareisha gozo soda mechavera. Man stole a field from his friend. And the field is now coming. It was foreclosed upon, right? So a guy stole a field, and now the field was taken back by the Nixel. Kishu Goiva, when he wants to collect his loss, Goiva is a Karen, he gets the principal back, he can go after lien properties, he can go after properties that were sold. Upeiris, the fruits on the property, he can collect only from freestanding properties. Now, this doesn't make sense, because if you read the Brisa straight up, it sounds like the Gazlan who stole the property got the Nigzel, took back the property, and now the Gazlan is complaining that he lost money. That can't be. If you read the Brisa straight up, Gazlan Mamangavi, why should a Gazlan collect? I mean, he originally stole the property, and now the Nigzel took it back. Elalav, the Brisa must be talking about. The Brisa must be talking. Man stole a field from his friend, and he sold it to somebody else. The hishbicha, and that somebody else, that purchaser, put in improvements in the property. So when the purchaser got his property taken back by the Nigzal, he goes back to the Goslin and says, okay, he can collect the principal back from the lien properties, from any property that was sold or was once by the Goslin, plus the Shvach. So now the improvements. So we see from this Brisa that a purchaser from a Goslin could get reimbursed for his improvements, not like Shmuel. Rava said, here we're talking about, it wasn't sold. It was a Goslin that stole a property but didn't sell it. A man stole a field from his friend, and it was full of fruits on there, ripened fruits on the field. And he ate up the fruits, the Goslin ate up the fruits, and then destroyed the property by digging tunnels in the property. So Bon Nigzel Ligvois, now the Nigzel can't take his property back because it's all messed up. So if Bon Nigzel Ligvois, if he wants to collect his losses from the Goslin, Karen he gets back from any property that was once by the Goslin, even if he sold it. Bon Nigzel Ligvois Paris, but if he wants to collect back fruits, then he can collect back from freestanding, only from free property, free stuff that he has, not property that he sold, the Gazlan sold, because Paris is not Paris is something that the buyer, a buyer of a property from a Gazlan should not be held accountable for that. Sometimes you buy a property, there's a possibility that it could be foreclosed upon, but you only if the property is foreclosed upon because of a lien on a loan or something like that, but not because a Gazlan owed Paris that he stole. That's the understanding of the Brisa. So it's not that it was a sold property; it was the Nigzal collecting from the Gazlan. Rabba bar Rav Huna Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna says, "Kegoin." It's talking about. We go to Tes Vav Amar Aleph. Shenatlu masikim. And the Gazlan stole a property. Now, why doesn't he return the property back to the Nigzal? Because Masikin, tax collectors or thugs, took it away from him. So now, but it's his responsibility. He stole the property. He has to make the Nigzal whole. So, Bod Nigzal Ligvois Karen. If the Nigzal wants to collect Karen, he collects from anything that was once by the Gazlan. Bod Nigzal Ligvois Paris. If he wants to collect fruits, only So he collects from B'nechas and B'nei Chayim. But both of the situations, Rav and Rabba bar Rav Huna were both talking about that it wasn't the case where the Gazlan stole a property and sold it to another person. It was the Gazlan stole a property. And the Nigzal is coming to collect back that property from the Gazlan, but albeit the Nigzal cannot take the property per se. Either it's messed up or Masikin took the property from the Gazlan. So Rava, like Rabba bar Rav Huna, Rava didn't want to give Rabba bar Rav Huna's answer. That means that it was lost. It somehow, he didn't want to say that it was taken by Masikin because the Brisa says that the Gazlan, lost the property in court. And Masikin don't go to court to take a property. They just steal it or they just move on to it. So that's why he didn't want to learn like Rabba bar Huna's answer. Rabba bar Huna like Amakarava. Rabba bar Huna didn't want to say like Rava. That means that it's Yotzim B'tachas Yodai means that the same property is not in the possession of the Gazlan, but not that it's trashed. So therefore, Rabba Rav Huna did not want to learn like Rava. Rav Ashi is another answer to this brisa that it's not a question against Shmuel. Okay, let's start in Ketani. It's talking about the brisa gives you two points. The guy did both things. He ate the fruits, the Gazlan ate the fruits, and then sold the property. If the purchaser wants to get his Karen back because the Nigzal took the property back from the purchaser, he can collect from where? From the Gazlan. But he didn't put any improvements in the property. Ba nigzal ligvois peiros. But if he's coming to collect peiros, right? If he's coming to the nigzal wants to get his fruits back. So when he's going back to the Gazlan, he's the one that ate the fruits. He can only take from nechasim freestanding possessions. Now, according to Rava and Rabba bar Huna, we're talking about over here a Gazlan stole a property. Let's take either the Gazlan stole a property and the Nigzal wants it back. So now either the Gazlan trashed the property or the Gazlan had the property taken away by Masikin. So you say that if the Nigzal wants to get back his property, he could collect from Nuchasim Mushubadim from the Gazlan. So wait a second. But Nuchasim Mushubadim, you could only collect if there's a document, if there's a star. It's just as a plain outright theft. So what does the Brisa say? You can collect from nechasim mishabadim. Bein l'Rava bar Rav Huna, milva pehi. This is like a verbal loan. A guy steals a property, he's responsible not with nechasim mishabadim, but just from his nechasim b'nei chayrin to make the nigzal whole. Milva peh nechasim shabadim. Milva peh cannot collect from nechasim shabadim. So why does the Brisa say that the nigzal could go after the Gazlan's nechasim shabadim? Answers the Gemara, really, the Nigzal took the Gazlan to court, and once the Gazlan was found guilty in court, that's like a milva b'shtar, because everybody hears that the Gazlan had this stolen property. And then, the Gazlan, even though he was found guilty in court, sold the property. So there, when the nigzal takes his property back, he can when the nigzal takes his property back, the purchaser can go after menuchasim mishubadim from the gazlan. Ihachi peris nami. So then, why can't you go after the Paris from the Gazlan? If he was found guilty, then you should be able to go back for the Paris from Nuchasim Mishabadim. And says the Gemara, Amid Badin ala Keren Amid Badin ala Paris. It's talking about he was in court and Gazlan was found guilty of stealing the principal, the field itself, but was not yet found guilty for eating up the fruit. So my pascha says the Gemara, how could that be? Don't you go to the court at the same time? Not true. Stama de milsus, most of the time, ki tava inish karna tava bresha. First you go to court, try to get your field back. Then you say, okay, but there was fruits on the field. So you take it step by step, not to, you have two different court cases. So that's the unique way that Rava and Rabba bar Avuna are learning the Brisa. Okay, so let's review the bottom line. The bottom line is that Shmuel says that a guy purchased a field from a Gazlan, so and made improvements on the field, right? And made improvements on the field. So then, when he wants to get back from the Gazlan his karka, he can get back his karka because the nigzal took away the karka from the purchaser. So the purchaser goes back to the Gazlan and says, I'm going to take back, I need you to reimburse me for the keren, for the principal, but he does not get back the shvach. That's a very important point, because it looks like if the Gazlan is going to pay back the shvach to this purchaser, it looks like he's giving him ribas, interest. Says the Gemara, V'shava Shmuel, does Shmuel hold the kech begazlan less le shvacha, that if someone who purchases something from a Gazlan has no shvach? Shmuel, Rav Chinan bar Shilas, that when you sell something, you should ask the seller, does he take responsibility that the purchaser can go after him for improvements and even from fruits and from his possessions, from Menuchashim Mishabadim. B'mai, what are we talking about? Which type of purchaser can go after? In case his property is foreclosed on, he can go after the seller for the lost fruits. If it's talking about a purchaser that purchased the property, and then a creditor of the seller came and foreclosed on his property, so the purchaser goes back to the seller and says, I lost my fruits. I had ripened fruits on that field. Says the Gemara, does a Baal Choiv have a right to foreclose and take away the fruits of the field of the purchaser? You see, true, a guy who has a creditor can foreclose on the property itself, but the fruits, especially ripened fruits, is considered a separate item belonging to the purchaser, and you have no right, a Baal Choiv has no right to foreclose on those fruits. A Baal Choiv could foreclose on improvements on the property. Shvach en aval peris lo. He can't foreclose on the fruits. He can't repossess the fruits. Elalav, it must be b'lekech megazlan. When you're buying, it's talking about a Gazlan who's selling the property, and nevertheless, you can guarantee that we ask the seller to guarantee that in case the property is stolen, he's going to reimburse the purchaser. If the nigzal takes back the property, he'll reimburse the purchaser for the fruits, for the shvach. And so we see that Shmuel himself said that we can reimburse from somebody who purchases from a Gazlan can get reimbursed for shvach. So now you have a contradiction of Shmuel to Shmuel. One place he says a purchaser from a Gazlan does not get reimbursed for shvach, and another place he says it does. Rav Yosef explained, here we're talking about that the seller is not going to reimburse the purchaser by giving him more money, but he's going to give him a piece of land. And that does not look like rivers. You see, if you're giving him money to reimburse him for the improvements, so you're paying him for the principal, you're giving him back his money for the purchase, plus you're giving him money for the improvements, so that looks like rivers. But if you give him a piece of land, to reimburse him, so to speak, on the shvach, that's not like ribis. Amalei Abaye. So Abaye said, why not? If is ribis allowed to be paid instead of in money, paid in karka. I mean, usually it doesn't matter how you pay ribis. Ribis is ribis, whether you give money or not. Amalei. So Rav Yosef explained to Abaya, Hosam halva. When it's a loan, true, no matter what you're going to give, more than the loan that you took is considered ribis. Hacha zvini. Here it's just a sale. So the sale wasn't money, and you're giving back the money, the original purchase price, plus you're giving a little extra piece of land to recompensate for the lost improvements. That does not look like ribis because it's like two steps removed. One, it's not a halva, and two, you're not giving back money, you're giving back something else. You're giving back karka. Others say, if, and here's another thing, if the seller makes a commitment prior to getting the money from the purchaser that he's going to reimburse shvach, then it works. You see, and he made a kinyan that it's almost like that the shvach is like already gifted to the purchaser. So even if it turns out to be a stolen property, in this particular case, Shmuel would agree that the purchaser gets reimbursed for improvements. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says, can you guarantee ribis even before you get the money? To say I'm guaranteeing you to get ribis, to give you interest. I mean, what's the difference? Amalei Hasam Halva, a true loan, no matter what, the borrower can never commit to pay back interest even prior to getting the money. Vahacha, over here, zvini, it's a regular sale. So prior to getting the money from the sale, if the seller says that in case it turns out this stolen property, I guarantee you that I will pay you back, reimburse you not only for the purchase price, but also for any improvements on the property that you could do. So Shmuel is not across the board that a buyer from a gazlan does not get reimbursed for shvach. Gufa, we learned in a brisa, we learned a teaching before. Amar Shmuel, Shmuel said, Bal choiv goyvesh shvach. A bal choiv, when he forecloses on a property, creditor that forecloses on a property, he can even collect the improvements on the property that the purchaser made, and let the purchaser go back to the one that sold him the karka and get his money back. Amar Rava, Teda, I'll prove it to you. It's written in every star that way. Basically, he says, I will stand and silence and purify and cleanse the sale. I accept full responsibility if the land is repossessed by my creditor. Even if you put in any improvements on the property, I'm going to make you whole. And that's what it says in every sale. Amalei. Rav Chia bar Rava l'Rava. So Rav Chia bar Rava said to Rava, a gift that it doesn't say that this language, will the Bal Choiv creditor not be able to foreclose on the improvements of the property that was that the recipient of the gift did? Amalei, and yes. Would a gift, a recipient of a gift, be more powerful than somebody who purchased the property? Where you say, if you purchase a property, the creditor of the seller can foreclose on the entire property, including improvements. And a recipient of a gift of a property, a creditor can only foreclose on the property, but not on the improvements. Amalei and yafe beyafe. Yes, matana is different because a gift, he didn't pay anything. So if he's putting in his own shvach, and he cannot, and if he puts in his own shvach or the recipient of gift, he won't be able to go back to the gifter to get that back, the improvements. As opposed to somebody who purchases a property, he'll be able to, if it's foreclosed on his improvements, he'll be able to go back to the seller to get the money back. I have a proof to Shmuel from a brisa. And one of my friends say the brisa is talking about something else. Tanya, we learned in the brisa. So this brisa, according to bringing a proof to Shmuel, because if you say the brisa is talking about, if the brisa is talking about a bal choif, then then that's why you get the shvach from Rechasim b'nei chayrim. Huna and his friends say that no, the brisa is talking about a gazlan. We go over the shvach. Shmuel says it's only talking about a bal chayv, but gazlan you don't get shvach. So it depends how you learn this brisa to come up with your opinion. Tanya Idach, we learned in another brisa. The guy sells his field to his friend, and the purchaser, did improvements on the property. And a Baal Choiv came and repossessed the property. When the purchaser wants to get his money back, if the improvements was more than the expenses that he put in, so he gets the improvements from the owner of the field. The expenses, the guy, the creditor, before he forecloses on the property, should pay for the expenses. And the improvement on the property, above and beyond the expensive, he should go back and get his money back from the Bala Karka, the one that sold him the Karka. But if the expenses are just more than the improvements, that means the guy put money into the property. Then the creditor, before he repossesses the property, should give money for all the expenses that the purchaser put into the property. Now, what is Shmuel going to say about this price? If it's talking about a guy who purchased from a Goslin, well, Shmuel holds that a Goslin never gets, a purchaser from a Goslin never gets reimbursed from Shmach. The Amar Shmuel, Lekech Megazin less Shvacha. A guy who purchases from Goslin is reimbursed for Shvach, for improvements. And this brisa says you could get your improvement money back. If it's talking about a Balchoiv, Kasheresh of Sefer, the Amar Shmuel, Balchoiv Goiv Shvach. Shmuel says a creditor could collect the Shvach, and he doesn't have to give any money to the purchaser. And here the brisa seems to say, the Reisha and the Sefer says that before a creditor forecloses on a property, he should pay off the purchaser for his expenses. Answers the Gemara, if you want, I can tell you it's talking about Bilkech Megazlan. Guy bought it from a Gazlan. And the reason why you're getting Shvach here is because the Shvach of the Shvach is being paid by the Goslin after the purchaser got his property repossessed. The Goslin is going to pay his money back. Plus, for the improvements, he's going to, instead of giving him cash, he's going to give him karka. Or in the sale document, he committed that he was going to pay back the shvach. So in that case, even Shmuel agrees that a lekeach from a Goslin gets paid back for the shvach. Iba yisema b'bal choiv. It's talking about a balchoiv. Like Tasha Khan, we go to Amud Beis, Khan b'shvach, Amagila Kasayin, Khan b'shvach, she'ein magil Kasvayim. In other words, if you have fruits that reach up to, that are very near to be cut, but you still need the karka, that's like regular fruits, and the balchoiv cannot collect that. But when b'shvach she'ein magil Kasvayim, that's which is fruits that are not yet ripened, so to speak, so they're part of the land, then the shvach can be collected by the balchoiv. A balchoiv cannot go collect any improvements of the field, only an improvement that's part of the field. For example, unripened fruits, but ripened fruits, even a balchoiv has no right to repossess. So as the Gemara of Amaisim b'chol yoyim v'komag v'Shmuel afil l'shvach hamagiya l'ksayim. Shmuel would also, he was a judge, and he would allow people to repossess karka, credited to repossess land, even with fruits that are on the field that are already ripened. How could that be? Shmuel, didn't you just tell me Shmuel would not allow such a thing? Like kasha, hadamasik kishir ar shvacha, hadamasik be el kishir ar diyav le shvacha umasalik le. When it depends what the loan is. If the loan is exactly the land and the improvements on the land, then the creditor can repossess the entire land. But if his loan is less than the land plus improvements, so then he has to repossess the entire land, but then give money to the purchaser to reimburse him for the improvements that he put into the land. So now the question is, why? So the Gemara just asked one last question. If a creditor is repossessing a land, he can repossess everything, and the land now belongs to the creditor, and any improvements he pays for he gives it to the purchaser. Because once the creditor wins the case, he can foreclose on the land, and the purchaser has no right to buy off the land from the creditor. It's up to the creditor. He takes over the land. There's an opinion that says that if the lekeach, the purchaser, has money, he could actually pay the creditor and make him go away, right? So name a lay. So let this case say, in case where the creditor foreclosed on the entire property, which was more than the loan, if I had money, I would have got rid of you. I wouldn't have let you take any part of land. Now that I don't have money, then at least let me own part of the land for the amount of money of my improvements. In other words, don't pay me for the improvements. Let me still own part of the land. So the Gemara says, that he said that he made the land, this particular property needed to be foreclosed upon, because in the loan documents it says that no matter what, this lender will have a right to this particular property, and therefore the purchaser of that property has no right to give money to make the creditor go away. He could only, if he did improvements and the loan is less than the land plus the improvements, then what the creditor should do is give money to the purchaser. Okay, let's go on to one more piece, and we'll stop in 2 minutes. Hikur bar she'ena shaloi. One more, just to go over machlokes. Let's say, until now, we're talking about a guy purchased a property from a gazlan, but he didn't know it was stolen. But let's say a guy knows for sure that it was stolen and purchased the property anyway. So why did he do such a thing? So if a guy recognized that the seller did not own this property and he bought it anyway, Rav says he could get his money back from the seller when his property is repossessed, because he gave the money temporarily to the seller. Shmuel says you don't get any money back, because you purchased the property knowingly that it's a stolen property. So now the Gazlan gets to keep that money. Bye, Kami Palgi. What are they arguing about? Rav Sava Odom Yedea Shekarka Einloi V'Gamal Nason L'Shem Pekodem. Everybody knows that he knew that this karka doesn't belong to him. So why did he buy it anyway? Because he wanted to give his money to be watched by the Gazlan. Like, there was no banks then, so he has temporary holding place. He gave the guy the money, but now that the property was repossessed, he gets his money back. Why didn't he tell the seller that he's buying it for a pekada? So he thought that the guy is not going to want to watch his money for nothing. So that's why he did this ruse. He bought this property knowingly that it's a stolen property in order to get the seller to watch his money for a little bit. Shmuel says much worse than that. When you buy a property that you know it's stolen, so then he know that this karka did not belong to the seller. The goma v'nasul and he gave it to the seller for as a present. Why didn't he say that it's a gift? So he was embarrassed to give this guy a gift, so he pretended to buy this property from him, knowing that it's a stolen property, and basically he gave it as a gift. Now I'm just going to say one point, and then we'll stop over here. The Gemara's question is, if you knowingly know that you're giving money to something that's not going to work, so then Rav and Shmuel had this argument before. The Itmar, a guy gives kedushin to his sister. Well, everybody knows that kedushin is not to his sister. So Rav you get your money back. Your sister has to give you your money back. Shmuel says the money is a gift. Everybody knows you can't be Mekadosh's sister. So why did you give money to your sister? You gave the money for safekeeping to your sister, and you didn't want to tell her it's for safekeeping because she may not want to take in responsibility. Shmuel says, "Mois matan, it's a gift." Everybody knows you can't Mekadosh's sister. And you gave it for a gift. Why didn't you tell your sister you want to give her a gift? So you figure she's going to be embarrassed. What the Gemara's question is that this machlokes by buying a property that you know is stolen is similar to the machlokes that Rav and Shmuel had by giving kedushin to your sister knowingly you can't marry your sister. So why do they argue with the same svaras in two different places? And this will end off over here by this question.
Thank you.